would like to present to you a nicely packaged perspective that's commonly seen but never fully vocalized or realized in such a manner. And just because what I specialize in tends to be more frontline related, I want everyone to keep stuff like this in their back pocket, so they know how to recognize it and deal with it properly. So you backliners in the back of the class need to pay attention too. But okay, like the video title says, let's talk about playing behind enemy lines, what it does, and also how to get there. Because that is an important step, being able to do the thing you're trying to do. So just like it sounds, you are placing yourself behind your opponents, ideally to apply a coordinated attack on the enemy from multiple directions, splitting their focus from the objective or from trying to establish a general control of the map. If these sound like tactics, that's because they are. This is a battlefield, so you have to have some kind of plan of attack. But let's not just sound cool, let's also sound smart. I'm a very sneaky player who likes to cause a lot of headache for my opponents, but my big secret is that I let the enemy do a lot of the heavy lifting for me. Whether intentionally or not, almost every player functions along the lines of Newton's first law of motion, which everyone obviously knows is about inertia. And I know you've memorized it already, but just let me remind you for the sake of it, that it's often simplified to objects in motion stay in motion unless acted upon by an external force. That last part is me. I'm the external force. It's pretty reasonable that every player will tend to move forward as far as they can until they reach an enemy player. But without any random battle encounters, they don't really have any reason to stop, so they'll continue on their merry way. And if there was some, I don't know, let's say a gingerbread lurking out there, but they never saw it, especially since they're obviously not real and could never hurt anybody, they would have no real reason not to move right past it and let it live behind them to perfectly inconvenience them as they try to engage the rest of their opposition. That completely hypothetical ninja-bread man of ginger isn't at all to blame for coming out of nowhere and backslashing them because they completely ignored him and repositioned him there themselves, as they were compelled by the gravitational pull of every map that makes players move out to the middle, completely giving up their claim to all of that free real estate behind them. It would be a complete waste not to use it, and honestly, I'm doing them a favor. But no, I'm the bad guy for seemingly coming out of nowhere and bopping them on the head or blowing them up, or I mean in that completely hypothetical situation where a gingerbread hypothetically definitely committed hypothetical splats that may or may not have happened. Alright, now that I've gotten my failed attempts at entertainment out of my system, I can finally tone the cringe down a bit. But my main point is, I plead not guilty because you can't prove it and you won't live to tell the tale. Also, and more importantly, I want people to realize that there are so many things to pay attention to in Splatoon, and it's impossible for one person to keep track of absolutely everything all the time. So, we take advantage of the blind spots among all of the chaos while everything is on fire because we like to watch the world burn and it keeps us warm on those cold nights, okay? Okay, for realsies, let's look at this map. And then, let's flip it on its side. And then the other side. And then flip it over. Then back over, then clockwise, then 2 hops this time, right foot let's stomp, then make it sepia, add in a vignette, and where on the map do you think we are? Coming out of spawn, right? A reasonable answer. Tower in the middle of Inkblot, bunch of other people fighting in the middle. We better get to it. But we're not moving. I think we're broken. We need a new one. What's our return policy? Tell you what, viewers, play a game. How much sleep do you think I had when I wrote this? No. Let's play a better game. Let's test your map recognition. I want you to see if you can guess where I am on the map. Am I on my side of the map? Or am I on their side of the map? I'm not trying to trick you, completely, but I assure you these are totally normal games for me, and I do have a point to prove here. I'm just gonna let the clips play first, and then we'll come back and review your work later. Good luck! I am in fact starting on their side of the map, greatly confusing them as to why there is a Brella shooting at them from their base. I'm even more confident because I have Baller, but I do see they activate armor and I have 3 people of theirs accounted for, but I'm going to retreat while I still can. And I'm aware of their machine being the only one in mid, so I only have 1 more person to get past. Their dynamo gets picked off somehow, so only 3 enemies left, and 2 of which I left back on their plat. And 1 by me splashdown, so just going to retract my presence down a level and then around and reposition to where I'm fairly positive I've got all enemies now coming at me from one direction. I get a free bomb pick on their blaster, and I've also stalled enough to where my teammates are actively participating in the conflict, where we already have them down 2 people. I see the machine has isolated itself on top mid, so taking advantage of them being stuck in mid-air, I pressed that fight where we gained back zone, didn't even have any casualties, and since me kinda making them stumble off their plat had them at a rather disorganized trickle, making it easier to pick them off 1 by 1. I didn't really do any fighting myself, just some distraction with my mere existence. Next part, we're counting down the final few points of controlling the zone, but unfortunately doesn't stick. But that's quite okay considering our lead. I was being pressured and low on ink while I have a teammate jumping in at a somewhat inconvenient time, but I'll try and play off this hand I'm dealt as I can at least kinda cover their jump, and luckily it's one of my 2 teammates with a wall, so they can also protect themselves. We need to make something of this, so I commit with my baller. Luckily, Blaster gets caught out because Blaster frame data be like. I know there was someone on their side ramp, but luckily they get caught by my bomb, so we take those. I'm able to shift focus to the encroaching launder machine, using my umbrella and map terrain for extra cover just to turtle in the corner while teammates cover fire makes them back off. So I reposition, they're 2 down so I can focus on the machine, who we have pinned in a 3v1 for easy cleanup. And gonna reposition and try to find a good seat on their plat while they're still respawning. Teammate's booyah goes off, so gonna camouflage myself further in and wait a beat. Don't see anything happening, so gonna press on. Flub the wall climb a bit, which should get me splatted but doesn't, so we take those. I have the machine's attention, so that's fine, and I'll climb further in because people hate it when you do that, even though they should have completely ignored me as I place myself in a spot I can't influence the zone from. But I just make more noise and the blaster takes the bait, and after a slight scuffle they somehow get bumped off, giving me free reign to go and pester them from behind, which would really confuse anyone who isn't the blaster getting attacked from behind, but the game wraps up before it even matters. Next on Splatzone's Albacore, surprisingly starting off on my own side for once, but jumping into mid after using Baller, and I see 2 specials going off and I have a healthy fear of Hammer as there is literally nothing I can do against that as an undercover, so we out. And don't even care, I'm heading right towards a Hydra, I'll push my luck with them instead any day. Honestly wasn't ready for the splashdown and literally no idea how it didn't just break my shield and splat me, but bless this block putting in work and we resume our fight to the death, which I'm able to T-pose and finally get a glance at the state of the game. And I see their specials must not have accomplished too much, so just gonna press the remaining few enemies and call it a day. And more Splatzone's Albacore, starting from my own side once again, just to go to the spot where literally everyone likes to stand and think they're safe an entire bridge away, but my Pure of Sub power up makes that really easy to go bomb bowling. Only netting 2 out of 3, but not bad I guess, and I just go and pester the leftovers who moves in to get my teammate, but I can at least get the splat back. Awaiting the arrival of my earlier victims and just resetting back to phase 1. Next clip, I am in fact on their side this time, and I've been doing that to them all game, so now they're in on the joke too, and I've got their focus a bit split. But now, being the undercover from down under with Baller, I push in right behind their front line, which was perfectly set to retreat from missiles, making them run right back into me. 1 goes down, Hydra gets pushed in the corner, so just slide my bomb into their DMs, and then I can focus on the K-shot and use my shield and slight extra cover to duel with them, along with air support from my Explosher, and put a nice bow on that retake. And if you do happen to go back and rewatch that segment, take notice that we only had our inzep down at the start of that clip, and then didn't lose a single person after that. And continuing with more Splatzone's Albacore just for the extra confusion, but yes, this is me taking their side of the map that they're not using as they decided to take ours. Just a quick awareness scan for their respawns, we finally cap zone and one of theirs commits across bridge, making it difficult to avoid bombs, but they bail and dive into enemy ink and don't really have anywhere to go but get pinned down by me. Two of my teammates join up, but unfortunately, I am sad to report to everyone the King of Poop gets slain. But I'm aware Tri-Slosher is coming from the right, so I shift over a bit. The 96 is still ahead of me, and that's fine. And I did see one sneak over to the left thanks to the armor glow, and I've been sneak attacking them from behind the entire game, so now I've got them infected with my shenanigans, of course I know to look out for it, but I forced them to boot up Fall Guys instead of Splatoon 2. And follow around to the people in the corner, and that ends exactly as you think it does, and I really wish I had waited to clip the rest of that, but I think I was more amused by the Brella boop, and I wanted to make sure that I did not miss that. And for this last one, we're on defense in overtime, and we all know exactly where I'm headed. And I'm even missiled so they can even more clearly see where I am, but I literally don't care. And now I can taunt them even harder, as they can't fully commit to me since they need to focus on tower. But they can't focus on tower because they need to try and stop me, so it's really a lose-lose for their mentality. And I'm such a good bomb sniper, already got a victim on the first try. Their 52 tries to buy a little time with their Booyah Bomb, and then gets annoyed thinking they can try and shoot at me, but it's no use. And I do admittedly panic gamble a bit with 2 down on both sides, and I really should have stuck to my plan to just keep throwing bombs, as the enemy respawns were nowhere near close to being able to kick me out. But I do land a nice direct while the machine takes me out, but unfortunately struggles to control the tower while my own teammate narrowly gets on ahead of them. So one of the main points I want to drive home with this which side am I on exercise is that sometimes it really doesn't matter. This is a fast-paced game that allows for so much flexibility, improvisation, creativity, and resourcefulness, and the utilization of the very map on which we play is no exception. A single player only has so much effective range that they can influence, so anything outside that range is in fact not theirs or any area they can actually hold on to. We often fight over the most popular relevant areas, but that doesn't necessarily mean less popular positions are any less relevant. They might just be a little harder to take advantage of. And I want people to understand it's okay to push forward, especially if you're clearly aware of spots the enemy is in, and they won't be able to get you easily, as there are going to be moments where that will be the safer option. It's not like it's unfamiliar territory, as maps are symmetrical, so it's literally the same thing you have on your own side, and even better yet, people just don't expect it. And most of the time, players are only managing the 180 degrees in front of them. There are a few talented people actually capable of managing 181 degrees, but that's the absolute limit. Impossible to do more than that. Imagine actually turning all the way around sometimes. Man, that'd be pretty wild. But okay, enough of the fiction. Once you've familiarized yourself with the basic flow of how a map and mode is played, such as who needs to be where in order to push an objective and where the support of that push is placed, you can start thinking outside that box of where you can try and get behind the enemy lines. Because once you know what the enemy wants and what their demands are, it's up to you to be able to influence the supplies that make that happen. And being aware of whether a team wants objective or splats more gives you some good ideas of where they might be approaching as well as where their lines of sight will be focused. It's very common that after you stop the enemy push on Rainmaker Kelp Dome, you want to go to the other side and dump it off your ramp. So, if you're still on offense, why not just reposition yourself early from your previous failed push and beat him at the pass? I want to emphasize that sometimes you don't even need to go that deep into enemy territory. Sometimes you can just take a few steps on their side and their oblivious momentum will carry them right past you and again letting them set themselves up for you. One of my favorite opening pushes on Inkblot is to just go far left, stop inking off the drop, and just take a short stroll undetected onto the enemy side, where I have a decent amount of cover and space to work with should things go south, and staying off the radar of those observant, pesky map checkers, who won't see any enemy ink and therefore won't see any problems. I tell people this is what I do, but I will still get opening picks off this, and I have zero business continually being able to do so, but that is certainly not my problem. Arguably, the deeper around you go into enemy territory, the more likely you'll be able to pull off such a stunt, but that's absolutely going to be taking more time, which you may or may not be able to afford depending on the situation. I guess it's here I'll mention what should be the obvious counter, especially in this economy, the infamous Tenta missiles. But you see, the thing is, people don't care about using them effectively. We're going for quantity and not quality and calling it a day. They see the small cluster of targets ahead of them, and that's about all they go for. The ranged pressure is valued way more than the snapshot information obtained by knowing enemy locations. Sometimes people are inquisitive enough to know why there's only 3 targets and they can't find that 4th and may actually do the fabled turnaround to scan for the location of everyone. But also a lot of times 3 out of 4 is perfectly fine for them, and it's in that regard that if you are playing against missile farmers, staying far beside and behind them is actually a pretty safe location to remain undetected and easily be able to punish them. Of course, results will vary. But now let me show you some examples where I'll barely cross over. We're on tower control for Schellendorf, Bamboo's already down and Roller just went down, so more room to work with, less odds of confrontation for me. Luna above is bollard, and I see a laser, meaning the E-leader is by themselves, so I can just try and chance holding forward on them, especially since jumps might be headed their way, or others are still swimming in off respawn. Get the quick win, no other immediate fights to be had, so a few frames to relax, reset, refocus, what have you. The Bamboo rolls up carelessly, the Roller jumps in and is getting pressure from both sides, and we're certainly not leaving them many options. This was even more effective all because I've increased our angles of attack, as well as reduced their amount of safe zones simply because I was able to make it behind tower. If I'm not here, they now have all of this area to fall back on, as well as making an easy spot for reinforcements to show up. But simply just because I'm existing here, not even doing all that much either, mind you, I've complicated a number of their dynamics that they should normally be able to rely on. While on the opposite end of that last defensive clip, let's switch to a more aggressive offense on tower control for Sturgeon, and one where we need a winning push in the last few seconds, where I employ one of my favorite arts of distraction. A quick and easy pick on their snipe really opens up the entirety of our following successes, as they've now lost eyes in the sky and some oppressive support from high ground. We're pushing tower, so I know that's what enemy lines of sight will be prioritizing, so I'm going to push forward in parallel, and sure enough, I see a pretty open court with enemies stacked up more so on the right, just in front of tower as I expected, and honestly how they should be. Upon my immediate drop into their court, I'm taking enemy fire from behind, so retreat really isn't an option for me right now and I'm forced to go forward, but that's fine with me because that's where I wanted to go anyway, and I also try to pull the Knots' attention as well. I'm doing that thing where I'm standing slightly in enemy territory, and that really makes people upset that you've taken something from them even though they weren't using it, and it might seem crazy heading towards enemies that are firing, but let me provide some sound reasoning as to why it's a safer option for me in this particular circumstance than you might think. When someone is firing their weapons, their AoE or area of effect is the space right in front of them. So factually, some parts to their sides and literally everything behind them is the safe zone. The reason that safe zone is so feasible to me right now is because their initial focus was on tower, and that means I can take an initiative to reach that area behind them. This is so ideal for us because I'm setting them up in a slight lose-lose situation. They either have to take their focus off tower and let us earn objective points, or they leave themselves vulnerable to me. Either way, I'm now at a good spot to begin my own attack regardless of whatever option they choose. For some fighting game terminology, I've essentially executed what's known as a cross-up, which as defined specifically from the Street Fighter Wiki, is when a character attacks an opponent from behind quick enough that the opponent cannot orient themselves properly in time. This is a common tool I utilize for many beneficial reasons. 1. Most people, when getting shot at, will pause and retreat or evade to the side. And like I mentioned earlier, the danger zone is still in front of the enemy, and as long as they get to keep firing in a mostly forward direction, they're going to be way more comfortable. So forcing them to rotate beyond 180 degrees, which we know is impossible for people to do, at least requires them to put in more effort. The second reason is disorienting the stance of the enemy, getting them all turned around, is a massive buff for the rest of my team, without even requiring them to work harder. My opponents are now making a pretty bold statement having their backs turned to my teammates facing forward who are just attacking like usual. I do end up going down here, but the rest of my team is safe, and we've severely hindered their numbers, increasing our likelihood for success. And look how far I didn't even have to go. All I did was cross the enemy court and place myself on their step, gaining aggro for half the enemy team, relieving pressure from objective. I'm not going to say what I did was easy, but it's certainly not complicated. I do plan on putting out a video on my mechanical style as an agility tank in Splatoon at some point, which may help explore some more of the how I'm doing things in this video, but we'll get there another day. Let's do one more example, and you can literally see me, without exaggeration, single-handedly, because I was by myself, break the sanctity and common rules of Splatoon warfare, because no one was expecting it. 30 seconds left, my entire team is down, and I'm stuck in mid with all 4 members of the opposing side. What would you do? Jump out, back up on your fan and regroup with the rest of your team? Well, what if, hear me out now, we went behind the enemy. There is a 0% chance that we have to worry about any respawns. They're not in any high grounds, and because of the cowardice of the Forge, they literally gift-wrapped their fan to me. This is such ideal chaos for me, as the enemy who does have firm control of the zone no longer has a safety net of their own side they can usually rely on, and a bit of paranoia knowing an enemy they can't reach is behind them, so their defensive focus is going to be split at best. We get to fire down on scattered enemies from multiple angles we shouldn't normally have access to. And they've lost quite a few people now, so being on their side does grow riskier, but I simply need to pick a safer area, which is literally any direction besides the enemy spawn. But as we do need to try and hold our control now, I have to play up, but not many active enemies for me to run into, so that's a pretty easy mission. I'm able to pick off someone, probably mentally stressed trying to rush back and secure the zone, so a pretty easy sneak attack. Only 2 enemies remaining, and I see one, so I try to go run interference, but luckily time was on our side, and our stall doesn't need to last too long. And just think about how we got here. All because some mad lad solo ballered across mid, not to explode on zone, not to retreat safely back to their own side, but purely to gain safe passage to the enemy side fan and pester them from behind. Why did that work? Because solo and literally anything can work? I mean, that's not completely wrong. But, like I did mention at the beginning, this is actually easier to pull off in comp, mainly because you have a more reliable stream of information and intent. This requires good timing, and you're more likely to have that good timing syncing up with the rest of your team because you'll be acting at times when it benefits them, especially coordinating along with pushes, where the enemy is focused on objective. It's really easy for this to kind of fall apart in solo because you're ready to push, but the rest of your team might not be. Pushing a little too soon, too late, I mean, you just don't have that information without actual callouts. But with voice chat, you're way more likely to be in line. But I do believe that is all I have for you today, and hopefully I've fed you enough food to broaden your perspective on the effective fluidity of various areas on the map and how they can further be utilized depending on how much traffic they may be receiving at different points in time. But like always, this has been the completely innocent Gingerbread Man, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Intruder alert! Red spies in the base!
Red spies in the base?
Gentlemen?
I see the tower is safe. Tell me, did anyone happen to kill a red spy on the way here? No? Then we still have a problem. The spy has already breached our defenses.
All right, who's ready to go find the spy?
Right behind you.